President Bola Tinubu has issued an executive order to safeguard and enhance oil and gas revenues for the Federation, curb wasteful spending, eliminate duplicative structures in the critical sector of the national economy, and redirect resources for the benefit of the Nigerian people. The President, according to a release issued by his advisor on information and strategy, Bayo Ononuga, signed the order in pursuance of Section 5 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. In the same vein, it stated that the directive seeks to restore the constitutional revenue entitlement of the federal, state, and local governments, which were taken away in 2021 by the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA, explaining that the PIA created structural and legal channels through which substantial federation revenues are lost through deductions, sundry charges, and fees. Joining us on the show to discuss Tinubu's signing of the executive order on direct remittance of oil revenues to the Federation account and what the implications are is Nick Agule, an energy expert. Good morning, and you're most welcome to the morning show, Mr. Agule.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Dr. Abate. Good morning, Rufai. And good morning to our viewers globally. Thank you for inviting me.
Welcome.
Good morning, Nick Agule. Petroleum Industry Act 2021. It took 21 years for us to have that PIA in place. And we hailed it at the time. We said it to attract investment, to create good business environment, it will enhance revenue going to the government. But what we hear now is that the PIA has failed. Has it failed? Because government has now adopted 4 executive orders. The first one on tax incentives, the second one on local government, the third one on what they call remission or whatever, to upgrade activities in the petroleum oil and gas sector. And now the fourth one, which is revenue. And what is being blamed is Section 54 of the PIA, which gives the GSCs and hands over joint ventures and production sharing contracts to NNPC. Now, government says NNPC is not paying dividends. In fact, sometimes they don't even pay. They take 30% for Frontier Exploration Fund. They take another 30% as management fee, 60%. Government gets just about 40%, and it doesn't get it regularly. So NNPC gets more money. So we understand that. But there are implications. One, I was asking yesterday, is it not better to go straight ahead and review the PIA to start with the legal framework instead of using an administrative handmaiden like the executive order? 2, what then happens to frontier exploration, which NNPCL says is important, whether it's in Dahomey Basin or in or the Komane project or in the Gongola Basin or any of the basins, that we have, even the Benin Trough. So what are the implications of this move? And do you think that the approach is in order? And what should the experts, the committee, implementation committee, what should they be looking at in specific terms?
Thank you very much, Dr. Abate. That's a bit of a buffet in the question, so let me try to attempt at them. The one that you asked whether it is the right thing to be done at this point, my answer is yes, absolutely yes. The president has taken the right steps. The president, in deciding to issue Executive Order 9, is standing by the Constitution. Just before I will go forward to answer the rest of the question, let me just make a clarification so that it is clear to our viewers, especially for those who may not understand these technical terms. So when we say the federation, we're referring to the 3 tiers of government. That's federal government, state governments, and local governments. The federation is different from the federal government. So these 2 terms are not the same, and I'll be using them a lot during this engagement. So basically what has happened is that Section 162, subsection 1 of the Nigerian Constitution says all revenues And the Constitution is very clear. It says all revenues accruing to the federation. So we're not saying federal government here. All revenues accruing to the federation shall be remitted to the federation account. That's what the Constitution says. And we all very well know that the Constitution is the superior law to any law. And so basically, what has happened is that the Petroleum Industry Act, which went through legislation, like you rightly said, for like 20 years, that was finally assented to law by President Buhari in 2021, actually contravened the provision of the Constitution of Nigeria. And it did so in the 3 instances that you have mentioned. Basically, what the PIA did was to kidnap federation revenues on their way to the federation account and put them in some buckets. And those buckets were out of the purview, out of the oversight of the 3 tiers of government. I mean, we could say that the federal government could look into what the NNPCL is doing, but the state government and the local governments were not ever able to look into what the NNPCL was doing with the 30% management fee of the production sharing contracts profit oil and the 30% frontier exploration fund, and there's another one which is a 10% on the rents on petroleum prospecting licenses and petroleum mining licenses. And let me just clarify another thing for our viewers to properly situate what's happening here. When we say a production sharing contract, because that is something that was in that executive order consistently, a production sharing contract is an oil company coming to the government of Nigeria and saying, give me the right to go and look if there is oil somewhere, to explore for oil. And the government say, okay, fine, I don't have a problem. It's your sole risk. I'll give you the license, go and look for. If you find oil, if you don't find oil, tough luck. Bye-bye. We are not involved in the money you spent. But if you find oil, you need to come back to us to discuss how we are going to share this oil. And that is where the concept of profit oil comes in. Because when that oil company like Shell, they found oil in Bonga under the production sharing contract, they now came back to the table to discuss with the government to say, I have found oil, so what do we do? So the government now says, okay, the oil that you have found, when you produce it, take part of the oil and pay the taxes. That is the royalty oil. Take part of the oil and pay some of the costs that you incurred when you are looking for the oil and you develop the facilities. That is what you call cost oil. Then what is left is called profit oil. That profit oil, we, the government, and you, the oil company, will share it. Now, it is the NNPCL that goes to lift that profit oil on behalf of the federation. And when they lift that profit oil, they, of course, spend some money to, transport the oil, ship the oil, sell the oil, convert the oil into dollars. And they are now expected to put that money in the federation account. That is the way it was happening before the PIA. But when the PIA now came in, some of these clauses were now smuggled in that contravened the Constitution. So they basically hijacked that money that was coming from that profit oil, sending 30% to the NNPCL account, saying, oh, this is your management fee. And you ask the question, you are not the one producing the oil. It is an international oil company like Shell producing the oil in Bonga PSC. After they have suffered and produced the oil, and now they say, government, this is your share of profit oil. You only carry the oil to go and sell in the market. How can that be 30% for you as management fee? What are you precisely managing? And then we took 30% and put in the Frontier Exploration Fund, of which it is the same NNPCL that is spending from it. And again, let me explain to our viewers so that they will understand this. When we mean frontier basins, just like Dr. Abati named some of them, what any acreage, any area outside of the Niger Delta is frontier. You know, some people think frontier means not. No. Anything outside the Niger Delta is frontier. So Nigeria said, let us go to the frontiers and look for oil there as well. And so they put this 30% in an account, in an escrow account, which the NNPCL is looking after, which nobody knows what is happening there. And I can tell you some of the mind-boggling things that are happening there because I have some data on what is happening with that account. And so what President Tinubu has now done is to say, wait, guys, the Constitution cannot be contravened. That profit oil must come to the Federation account first. When it comes to the Federation account, then we can appropriate it. That is the right thing to do. And Dr. Abati, your other question is that, okay, now that the Frontier Exploration Fund is not going to receive the 30%, what happens? Well, there are two things that will happen. Number one, the president can go ahead with the money in the Federation account, negotiate with the other subnational governments, that is the federal government, negotiating with the other subnational governments to say, what do we do with frontier exploration? And if they all come to an agreement that let's continue funding it, then they can continue funding it. It might not be 30%. It could be any percentage, 5, 10%, whatever the three tiers of government agree should be what it is.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Agule. Now, in a number of circles, especially players in this industry, the executive order has been praised as a good move by the president, but there's still some concerns around its implications for the NNPCL. One is that with the loss of the 30% management fee, this decreases their revenue capacity. Does it mean that, what would be the implication for operation costs for the NNPCL, for instance? There are concerns around even the security of the staff members of the NNPCL and just general operation costs. To what extent would this development impact that? And then what would this signal to international lenders, credit agencies? Would they reassess their revenue generation capacities as they would see it as it can be administratively reviewed at any time by the president through the route of an executive order, as in this case? Would it reduce confidence in the ability to lend, for instance, to the NNPCL?
To me, as far as I can see it, this Executive Order 9 that the president has signed is perhaps the most significant reform of his government. Because we're talking about the NNPCL. The NNPCL is now a commercial entity. The implication of that is that the NNPCL is just like Chevron, Mobil, Shell, Total. It's an oil company that is operating like any other oil company that we know. Shell is not coming to government to fund it. Chevron is not coming to government. Even the NLNG, which is also another commercial entity owned by the government, by the way, is not coming to the Federation account to be funded. They are sourcing for their capital, whether it is equity capital or is debt capital. They are investing, they are making money, and the NLNG is actually paying dividends to the Federation account. So the NNPCA, by this executive order, have now been given the matching orders. Go and be that commercial entity that the PIA says you are. Stop breastfeeding from your mother's milk. You are now an adult. Go and do it for yourself. And you know what will happen? The NNPCL, without these revenues, and I'm going to come to another one, which is joint ventures. I hope you will give me time to come to that one, because the president didn't touch on that one. And he needs to touch on that one, because they have hijacked the joint venture assets as well. So the NNPCL now, without this spoon feeding, without this breast milk from the mother, will now start living like an adult. If their revenues are not meeting up with their costs, there are only two things that Chevron or Shell will do if their revenues are not meeting up with their costs. They will either try and increase their revenue, or they will reduce their cost, or they will do both. And the NNPC has to do that. Because let's not forget, as we are speaking today, this NNPCA has been paying salaries to refinery workers for up to 20 years. No barrel of crude oil refined. And they are paying those salaries from this 30% management fee they are taking free of charge from the Federation account. So now that the money is not there, they will go and either start the refineries to start working and making money, or they will now have to start shutting down and telling workers that, sorry, we cannot fund you again. That is what a commercial entity will do. So the NNPCL should just go and get on with their business.
Okay, I mean, most of your arguments very on point, pretty much in line with some of the arguments made yesterday. The NNPC can no longer be a feeding bottle, and all this talk about frontier and basic form, you and I know it's all their rackets, till today, since they launched coal money the other day, about 2-3 years ago. What has happened in coal money? They just wasted our time with coal money. So all of this, they are frontier basic form. It's a racket. That's why you see that people that work in NNPC become billionaires. They ride private jet. They do so well. EFCC is chasing them afterwards. It's because of this free cash on the table. So I'm happy presidents have taken it off them. And as regards how are they going to function, they still retain about 20% on their operational profit, isn't it? And they should use that one to fund themselves now, Abi. So, but the question I even want to ask is, yes, everybody is saying it's a good one. The president has, done something in line with the Constitution. But my fear is it not the same thing we are complaining about the NNPC that the government will do with the federation account? Now the money comes to the federation account, but we don't still disperse the money to the people that need them. Ministries are not funded, MDAs are not funded, and we keep saying we are getting the revenue. That's just my ground. So it's just a case of you take it out from the NNPC, you bring it to another bureaucracy where corruption will still eat it. So the problem is not still solved. That's my only grouse in all of that. I don't know if you want to talk in line of that. But every other thing that the president has done on this, he is spot on.
I thank you very much, Rufai. You are very correct that this is part one of the show, which is get the money into the purse. There must be part two of the show, which is what do we do with that money? So the reforms of government must not stop at bringing petroleum profits into the purse, bringing tax revenues into the purse, and removal of subsidies and all of that. The part two must accompany it, which is how do we ensure that there is accountability on this in this pause, and that is work for the president to do, and the president's job is cut out for him. For me, if you look at what is happening in the United Kingdom now, former Prince Andrew, and I heard you people discussing it earlier in the show, he's been brought before the law, and that is all that President Tinubu needs to do. Bring everybody in Nigeria before the law. Nigeria will become so straight. Nigeria will become a developed country in no time if we run this country with the rule of law. And that's all that the president needs to do. And I know that before you take over from me, there's the joint venture one that I really wanted to talk about. The president has done this job halfway. The other job that the president needs to do is the joint venture asset. The CFO of the NNPCL, sitting before a National Assembly panel, himself considered that before the PIA, the joint venture assets were assets of the federation. He now says, after the PIA, the joint venture assets are now assets of the NNPCL. And there is nothing like that in the PIA at all. In fact, the only section that goes close to that is section 54 that says that we have created the NNPCL now to replace NNPC. Transfer the assets of NNPC into the NNPCL. So there's nothing in the PIA that says transfer the assets of the federation into the NNPC. So on what basis has the NNPC taken joint venture assets into NNPC, consolidating it with their books, using it to pay cost of their staff who are doing nothing? The NNPC has got refineries, they are not working. They've got pipelines across the country, they are not working. If the NNPC pipelines were working, Dangote will not buy 4,000 trucks because there are pipelines all the way to Maiduguri, Sokoto, everywhere. The pipelines are down. The NNPC has got gas plants by flow stations in the Niger Delta. They are not working. That is why we continue to have gas flares. The NNPC has got an upstream arm. I don't know how much production they are making. So the NNPCL itself is refusing to do its business. Now, the question is that if the joint venture assets were transferred to the NNPC, what valuation was made? Where is the deed of assignment and which accounting books were posted? So, President Tinubu, please go and also rescue the joint venture assets that the NNPC hijacked.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Agule. A lot of other contradictions. The NNPCL is registered with CAC. It is at the same time a company that is owned by the federal government under MOFI, Ministry of Finance Incorporated, shouldn't we just sell the shares of NNPCL to the Nigerian people so that it will have its own stakeholders and it can operate properly as a commercial entity? But we've run out of time. We want to thank you very much for joining us on The Morning Show.